The following is a presentation of the Radio Free Network and WMVU.org. All likenesses or similarities within the presentation is considered coincidental. Any reproduction of this or any other presentation without the expressed written permission from the Radio Free Network and or WMVU.org is strictly prohibited.
Hi, this is Christavus D, host of The Platform, a broadcast to podcast each and every Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the Radio Free Entertainment Network and WMVU.org. It's where, let's say, we sit down with you, the guest, and talk about everything and anything diversity. As my producer T-Nice says, whatever you want to talk about. Family, money, a diversity of topics just the way I like it. Social news, trending topics, word on the street. So let's get ready for this week's guest right here on The Platform. Hey, it's Christavus D, Radio Free Entertainment Network, WMVU.org. It's time for The Platform each and every week right here on Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. This week, believe it or not, I'm going to be speaking with Darius Sethna, high school senior at Nordonia High School, sports guru right here at the Radio Free Entertainment Network. And you're headed to what college?
Ohio University.
Ohio University. Once again, congratulations. Thank you. Let's back up for a second, and we're going to just jump right into this interview. And as a lot of people hear me say, I'm going straight for the jugular, baby. How'd you get into sports?
Well, I have been around sports at a young age. You know, it all started with, rec soccer. My dad was a rec soccer coach when I was young, and he coached my older siblings in rec soccer as well, so he's been a soccer coach forever. Then I started playing other sports like rec baseball, rec basketball, and then my love for professional sports came to me in middle school when I went to a Cavs game in 7th grade. That was actually the year they won the championship. I remember going to a regular season game. It was a home game, obviously, against the Chicago Bulls. It was a Saturday night primetime game that was on ABC. I remember that and going to that game. And I remember the Cavs losing. The final score was 96-83. I believe the game was on January 23rd of 2016. I was in 7th grade. But even though they lost, I still remember this feeling of just wanting to be around that kind of atmosphere again. And I started really following the Cavs when I was talking about this with you the other day. Their 2016 Eastern Conference Finals series against the Toronto Raptors. Game 1 from that series and then on, I've been following the Cavs every game, and it was the perfect time to become a Cavs fan, and that's basically where my love of sports grew, and then it grew for all NBA, to all throughout the NBA, and now these last couple of years I've been learning about different sports like the NFL, the MLB. I've been doing more research on the MLS as well. So, that one moment for me was really what triggered my entire love and desire to cover sports.
Okay, so you said a word that jumped out to me. You said the word research. So take me through the process of how so you set the groundwork. You were young. You had your date that you wanted to do it. So how did you go about studying? How did you get better at your craft, which you're going to continue to do when you go to college? But take me through those, I don't want to call them those freshman years.
Well, what really helped me actually was the job that I want to pursue in the career path focuses a lot on experience and actual being mentored by other individuals who have perfected that craft. In the summer of 2019, I had the chance to go to WAKR Studios right here in Akron with Ray Horner, who's a great family friend of ours. And I just learned all the different aspects of hosting a radio show, the behind-the-scenes work, doing a little bit of programming and seeing what he does, the techniques he used, and that personality as well. That's what really stood out to me, especially early in the morning. You have to have a very vibrant, energetic personality in order to be successful on a morning show. I also listen to a lot of broadcasts from different NBA teams, so using what kind of phrases do they use, how fast do they speak, and then differentiating that with TV broadcasts and radio broadcasts. radio broadcasts are much more difficult because, the fans can't actually see the game. So you have to call every single detail because it's so, especially in a basketball game, it's very fast-paced and it's extremely difficult. So you have to be able to understand the different techniques you have to use to be successful in a TV broadcast and a radio broadcast. And then also for me, in terms of researching for my podcast, the internet has been a wonderful tool for me. It's very easy to find certain stats I need for baseball, basketball, football. I can find scores, like, box scores on ESPN. So, you take that time to do that research a little bit. I do that before my podcast just to gain an idea, especially if it's a game I didn't watch over the weekend, for example, like a Cincinnati Bengals game, because I don't watch the Bengals, and I would talk about that for a little bit on my show. Then, I have those Bengals stats right there on the internet for me to see. And it's not hard at whatsoever, but you have to take some time out of your day. You have to have that motivation to do it, to have the best possible show or any kind of broadcast work you want to have.
Exactly. We call that show prep, and everybody needs to do it so that they're prepared for their show. So let me ask you a question. You mentioned Ray Horner, and I heard you mention, presenters. Who is your favorite, or one of your favorites? And I know who that is because you've talked about him, and why? Well,
I definitely know who you're talking about. The one and only Stephen A. Smith from ESPN. I actually saw an interview he did on a podcast on YouTube called All the Smoke. Which is a podcast I watch and listen to a little bit here and there. And he was kind of talking about his story and how he came up. And I really love his story because he basically came, from a similar area I came from. Not a lot of experience in the field. And he basically worked his way up to get to where he is. He's the face, probably, of sports broadcasting, to be quite honest with you. And, he didn't have a lot of experience at my age. And, he came up in the ranks just like I'm planning to do and hoping to do with my life. And he's, one of the faces of ESPN, if not the face of ESPN. So, with hard work and dedication from what I saw from him, anything is possible. So that's why I really look up to him and his story.
Anything is possible right here on the Radio Free Entertainment Network. It's your boy, it's your man, it's whatever you want to call me. But don't call me late for dinner. It's Christavus D. I'll be right back right after this break. We're interviewing Darius Sethna, Nordonia High School senior headed to college. We'll be right back with some more.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of novel or new coronavirus. Take the following everyday steps to help avoid the spread of all respiratory viruses. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue. Throw the tissue away and then wash your hands. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects or surfaces, such as remote controls and doorknobs. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. And stay home if you are sick. Call your healthcare provider if you develop fever, cough, or difficulty breathing. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
I'm Tiffany. I have some tips for you on how to quit smoking like I did. First, I did some reading about it. I found a lot of great advice on how to quit smoking and picked out the ways I thought would work best for me. I started by setting a quit date. Then I threw out my ashtrays, lighters, and matches. I did other things too, like exercising more, and it worked. But I'd still get cravings, especially on long car rides. To help me with that, I put a picture of my mother in my car. She died of lung cancer from smoking cigarettes when I was only 16. Now I have a 16-year-old daughter. That picture of my mother reminds me that I don't want to miss all the things my daughter is going to do in her life, including turning 17.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
The weekend is here. It's a party all night every Friday from 9 to midnight. The best of soca and Afrobeats music. Party music from the beaches of the Caribbean to the beautiful lands of Africa worldwide.
You feel me?
The best of soca and Afrobeats. The best of soca and Afrobeats music. The party continues Saturday at 9 to midnight with the Soca Mashup Rewind.
Turn up your radio.
You know what I'm saying?
Every Friday from 9 to midnight. Saturday at 9 to midnight with the Soca Mashup Rewind. The best of soca and Afrobeats here on WMVU.org, part of the Radio Free Network.
Colorectal cancer screening saves lives, but only if people get tested. About 23 million adults have never been tested. Almost 2 out of 3 have a regular doctor and health insurance that would pay for the test. Doctors often recommend colonoscopy, but the fecal occult blood test and sigmoidoscopy also effectively find colorectal cancer early. When people can pick the test they prefer, they're more likely to actually get tested. If you're between the ages of 50 and 75, talk with your doctor about which test is best for you. Make sure you understand the steps you need to take to get tested. If you have a family history of colorectal cancer or polyps or inflammatory bowel disease, ask your doctor if you should start screening before age 50. Through the Affordable Care Act, many people have access to health insurance that covers colorectal cancer screening tests at no cost. Remember, the best test is the test that gets done.
All right, welcome back to the Radio Free Entertainment Network broadcast to podcast. It's the platform right here and hanging out with Darius Seth. Now, Darius, what's going on with you?
Not much, Chris. Thanks for having me this morning.
Definitely. Once again, we were talking about graduation, and by the time this is played, of course, you'll be in college, and I'm sure you'll be back, and we'll have to talk some more. But we were discussing Stephen A. Smith before the break. And we were talking about some of the other things that you do to kind of better your skill set at sports broadcasting.
Right.
It sounds like you put in a lot of work. How many hours would you say outside of school that you do at bettering yourself at your craft?
Well, a lot of it is on the weekends, I would certainly say, because that's when I'm doing my podcast. So in terms of, uploading, preparing, and you also count the additional basketball games I would do. I'd probably do about 2 a week at our high school. I would say you're putting in if I had 2 games a week plus a podcast, I would say that's probably a good 4 to 5 hours around that, if not 6. But that's a very busy week for me now that the basketball season is over at Nordonia High School. Now I'm focusing more on my podcast, and now that I'm trying to incorporate and have a better sound in my podcast. That's something I'm working on, so I'm using Audacity to do that, thanks to you. So, that takes a little bit more time. So, total probably 2.5 hours on a Saturday to record the podcast, prepare, and then do any last-minute editing before I send it out for people to listen to.
Yes, and it's gotten better. I like the music, too. I like the music. You got some royalty-free music, right?
Yes.
Great. And, since we're talking about that, we were talking about, because I'm sure there may be a high school student from Nordonia who's listened to it, and I've kind of snuck in on you, and you probably haven't known it. You've done some play-by-play for Nordonia also, right?
Yes, for the basketball team.
So I know you talked about it earlier, but elaborate a little bit on how you talked about it earlier, but walk me through that process of how you did it, the play-by-play in action, because you were doing it for Nordonia. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So, and every night at around 7 o'clock, I would arrive at the high school because the game would start at around 7:30. And what I would do is I would check in at the front door, go into the gym. We have our own spot, area in the bleachers where we set up shop. All the cameramen for NordoniaHills.news, we have all our technology set up there. And we actually incorporated some live streaming this year for NordoniaHills.news, so people could tune in live and watch the basketball game. So we had a lot more equipment when working with that. And what I would do is I would have a notebook and a pen, and I would have a roster for the away team, because I had a roster for the Knights every game, and after 2 games I knew all the players, and then I see their faces in school as well, so I kind of recognize their names just from their face. And so what I do is I focus more on the other team, the visiting team. I write all their names down. I write their number, their position, their name, obviously. I write down the head coach, and then I just kind of trying to memorize that as much as possible. And it's hard in the opening minutes because the game is going by so fast, and you're trying to pick up all these other guys' name on the visiting team. But once midway through that first quarter, it's a lot easier, because in basketball, a lot of the top stars are on the court for a long period of time. So you get to understand, this guy's the primary ball handler. Okay, this guy is great at scoring. This guy is the main rebounder. So once you see the roles they play, and especially how long they're playing on the court, it's a lot easier to pick up their names and look at their face for that night.
Sounds good. Yeah. So you just gave some students a little cheat sheet.
It's a good strategy to use, especially for a fast game like basketball.
Right. So why did you start a podcast?
I started a podcast, actually a funny story. It was my freshman year of high school, and this is when I met a few weeks before, I met my advisor, Julie DeLuiso, who's done a terrific job and advising me and assisting me in making sure that I can be the best journalist I can be. And I met her and spoke with her about maybe doing some play-by-play for basketball, because that's what I originally came to her for. She was a substitute teacher in my English class one day, and she told our class, if you're interested in any digital journalism and sports broadcasting, let me know. So I went to talk to her about it. It seems it was about 3 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. But I talked to her about it, and a couple weeks later, she actually sent out a text to our little group chat for the sports broadcasting group, and it asked, there's a student at the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center who has a Cleveland sports podcast. Would anyone be interested in joining him? And so I said, I'll join. That sounds like a lot of fun. I never at that point had any experience in being in a podcast. And I remember our first episode was May 25th, 2018. May 26th, sorry, because it was a day after the Cavs tied the series with the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals and Eastern Conference Finals that year, and then Game 7 was the next day. So I remember that was our first podcast episode. The kid's name was Brady Hamilton, he was the original host of the podcast. And for a few months, we would go back and forth and talk about Cleveland sports, and then Brady would eventually graduate from high school. He didn't go to the same school as I did. He went to Garfield Heights, if I'm not mistaken. And so once Brady graduated from high school, I took the reins. I've had a couple students on my podcasts since then. Now I do phone interviews with another Nordonia student named Logan Purcell, who's done a terrific job for me these last couple of months with the podcast. I really enjoy speaking with him. And that's basically how it all got started.
Wow, that's a really good story,
yeah.
Man. There's so many things I want to ask you. I love it. One of the things I like about interviewing people is, I kind of set my questions, but depending on who it is, I kind of just fly off the cuff. But you said something that meant a lot to me, and that is, and I want to ask you this question. You said this several times from the times I've known you. I don't know if it's just because it's a young thing, because you're young, or if it's because it's a meaningful thing. You remember dates like it's like your business. Is it because you have a photographic memory, or is it because of your love for it so much that you remember these key dates? I know that sounds like a crazy question, but I ask those kind of questions that are kind of deep like that.
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. Especially when it comes to sports, because I can remember dates because, if a Cavs game happened on that day, I might not remember the score, but I can remember the date and probably remember the result. So I think just my love of sports really, and knowing oh, on this day I did this, and the Cavs also played on that day, and they won or lost or something like that. So it's definitely a little bit of both, and I try to use that to my advantage when I can.
Okay, you and I talked about this also. Double question here. I'll start with the first one. Let me do that. Are you going to pass the torch on to someone else?
In terms of the podcast, I'll see how it goes. I'm still going to work on it in the summertime. So once I have a few more episodes under my belt in the summer, I'll think about what I want to do before I go to college. So not 100% sure on what I'm exactly going to do right now. But once the summertime, in the grind of the summer, I'll probably have a better idea of what I'm going to do.
Right, because the Cleveland Sports Show that's because you're in a sports broadcast group at school.
Right.
So the Cleveland Sports Show was something that you developed.
Yes, it was part. It's not something that I began per se because the kid I was talking about before, Brady, is the person who started the show, and then once he graduated, I basically took over the reins because I started out as his assistant to the show. Okay. He would talk a lot. He would host the show a lot more, and I'd talk in a little bit here and there. And then as time passed, I took over the show and am the host now.
All right.
So, yeah.
We'll be right back right after this.
Yo, man, have you ever been on a taste vacation? You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Alright, check this out. Bruce's Jamaican Fusion Soul mobile food truck is nestled right in the heart of Akron with that Marcia's fish esco, that curry chickpea wrap platter, or my favorite, that Big Marv's Jamaican pulled pork platter. Oh, dog, I'm feeling real Metro Irene. If you're trying to get in where you fit in too, then log on to brucesjamaicanfusionsoul.com and sign up for the newsletter to receive notifications on where they'll pop up next. Bruce's Jamaican Fusion Soul mobile food truck, family inspired, owned and operated, a traditional Jamaican cuisine with a delicious twist.
This is a message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of novel or new coronavirus. COVID-19 is spreading in the United States, and leaving your home increases your chances of getting and spreading the virus. CDC recommends you stay home except to get groceries, medications, or other essentials. For more information, visit cdc.gov. Have you left your house for an essential reason? Make sure you take the following steps to avoid spreading COVID-19. Maintain social distance, approximately 6 feet or 2 meters from others. Wear a cloth face covering when in public. For more information, visit cdc.gov. CDC is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of a novel or new coronavirus. There are steps you can take now to get ready if an outbreak occurs in your community. Make a household plan. Learn how to prepare and to take quick action if someone gets sick. Older adults and people with chronic medical conditions are at greater risk. Take extra steps to protect them. Think about what you will do if there are changes to your work schedule. And remember to always practice good health habits, such as frequently washing hands with soap and water, staying home when sick, and covering coughs and sneezes. For more information, visit cdc.gov.
WMVU.org, Radio Free Entertainment Network. Welcome back to the platform. It happens each and every Wednesday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., a broadcast to podcast. And this week, we are talking to Darius Sethna, Nordonia Hills Senior. Let me do that again. 3, 2, 1. Nordonia Hills Senior. Hey, Darius, I wanted to ask you a question. We were talking about the broadcast and we were talking about the live color play-by-play. Right. But let me back up to something real quick. What about the journalism aspect of it? Do you write a lot of articles for .news, or tell me a little bit about the journalism side of?
Yeah, and especially once the COVID pandemic began, I had to stop my podcast because there were no sports to talk about. So, and my advisor, Mrs. D'Aloiso, recommended to me, hey, maybe you can start writing some articles now. And I thought that was a great idea. So I wrote some articles starting about, and what NBA players were doing with arena workers and how they were, kind of paying for their salaries, because obviously with all the arenas closed at the time, they couldn't go to their jobs. So I talked about how the NBA players were helping out with that. I also did a whole analysis and wrote an article on the Last Dance documentary about the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan and that dynasty in the 90s, and I wrote about my experience with watching the documentary, so that was a lot of fun. And last summer, actually, with at my dad's office, I wrote articles in both English and Spanish about immigrant athletes who made it to the pros here. So, guys like Yao Ming, Tony Parker in the NBA. I have an article about David Beckham. I focused a lot on immigrant athletes who made it to the pros, what country they were from, kind of their background, and what they were doing in the pros that makes them so great today.
Wow, that's great. It's like peeling an onion talking to you. I didn't know that about the sports and the in the Spanish. And how are those available, or can we find those on .news or?
Yes, you can. You can go to my dad's website.
Mm-hmm.
Law offices of Farhad Sethna.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole. If you go to, I think it's the blog section.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super familiar with the website.
Gotcha.
But there's a blog section, and then all my articles. There's an English section, and then there's the Spanish section of those same articles.
Oh, great.
And
well, maybe
then,
we can get that over. We'll put together a sports blog, and maybe we can have that available on the radio network.
The English articles of those athletes are also on the NordoniaHills.news website. You'll have to scroll down because they were from the summer of 2020, but the English versions will also be there for you to read as well.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Also, we'll make that available, hopefully, on Radio Free Entertainment Network. I say Radio Free Entertainment Network. I don't want to confuse you guys. It's Radio Free Network. The company is Radio Free Entertainment Network, but when you go to the website, you'll go to www.radiofreenetwork.com. So, Darius, let's see. What do you got going on for the rest of the summer before we wrap this thing up and put it in the oven?
Yeah. So this summer, I'm hoping to get back with Ray Horner at WAKR. I couldn't do an internship with him last summer, just how with COVID and the protocols and everything. I'm going to be getting my second COVID shot in about a week. So hopefully after that, obviously I'll follow all the safety protocols, and hopefully I'll be able to get back with Ray Horner for the summer. Also, I'll be getting ready to pack up and get ready to leave for college. I'm going to do my internship my orientation down in Athens at Ohio University. So I'm very excited for that as well. So a lot of preparation for a new life for this summer, along with some short-term goals that I want to work on. So I'm trying to keep myself a little bit busy this summer.
Okay. You said a new life. You said some key words, a new life. You said going down to Athens. What are those short-term goals, if you can share those with us? What are those short-term goals?
One of my short-term goals is I'm really excited to meet a lot of new people when I go to college. So that's one of my short-term goals when I get down there my freshman year. Meet as many new people as I can, create new friendships, begin relationships with people that might, that hopefully will go on for the rest of my life. I have some great high school friends from the band and from the soccer team who I'm still in contact with and will continue to be in contact with. But I'm also looking forward to going down to Athens and just meeting more people, because the more people I have in my circle, the better it'll be.
Well, they say Ohio U is the number 1 party school in the country, right?
Yeah, they might be a little bit, maybe not as much partying with all the COVID protocols going on.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
They don't care. They'll come in with hazmat suits on and everything. They party down hard there. I don't know. But but it's really been great talking to you. What would you leave for someone in high school as far as advice? I know that there's the valedictorian speech, but what would you leave? What would you have to say if someone was listening to this broadcast, a podcast, and they were at Nordonia Hills right now, and they said, "Hey, I found this podcast of Darius Sethna." What would you have to say to somebody listening in high school right now, whether it be a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior?
I would say, and this doesn't go just for the journalism, broadcasting, and reporting career path. This really, I think, is something you can use for any career path you choose. 2 C's: commitment and consistency. Especially, I learned a lot of that from my podcast. Actually, you have to be. I was very committed week in, week out, and I would tell my advisor, Mrs. DeLuiso, I'm going to be doing this podcast at this time. I'll be arriving to the basketball game at this time. So I was committed to those engagements. I put them in my calendar, so I knew what day. Hey, I'm going to the basketball game to broadcast. Oh, it's Saturday. I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm doing this podcast or something else. I want to make sure I get this article in by this date. So you have that commitment. But then you can be committed, but then you also have to be consistent. You actually have to follow through with that commitment. So, week in, week out, I had to be consistent and do a podcast. If I wasn't going to do a podcast, I would have to let Mrs. DeLuiso know, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. So it's really not rocket science, It's really just, again, it's how committed are you to making sure that not only you're successful, but you let others know when you're doing things, when it's going to get done, and then are you consistent? Are you following through and making sure, hey, is that actually done at that specific date? Am I achieving the short-term goals I want to achieve to have a brighter future?
From the 3-point line with nothing but net.
Yeah.
Darius, I want to thank you. That was tough. I can't even do nothing but close it out with that 3-point shooter straight from the red line, 6 feet out. Sethna hit it. Beautiful statement.
Thank you.
Beautiful statement.
Thank you.
And nothing but net on that. Once again, hope you can hang out with us at the Radio Free Entertainment Network. You're our sports mogul. I think we're going to we're making a site for you, actually, and we're going to stay in touch with you as you're at Ohio U, and it would be great to have some of that, have you have some information on the site, and people can follow you and all that jazz
I'll certainly
stuff.
share some content with you, see what media work I do down there.
Yeah, that'll be great, and we'll I think one day me and Skylar will come down there and party at OU when the COVID restrictions are down. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, sweet baby Ray. All right, though. Once again, thank you. Hey, it's Christavus D. Check me out each and every week, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's the Platform Radio Show, broadcast to podcast, where I just sit down with anybody and everybody and just have fun and just have talk. And you know what? I'm going to use the same thing that my brother said here. It's not rocket science. So hang out. If you're interested in being on the show, send your email to WMVUPROD@gmail.com right here on the Radio Free Entertainment Network, and I'll see you next week.
The Platform podcast or broadcast can be heard regularly on the Radio Free Entertainment Network and WMVU.org. Click on your device's app store to download the app today and enjoy The Platform.